Have you ever looked at a company and wondered why they chose to be weird? Most market segments tend to have established norms and conventions for a reason. Take for instance the smartphone you're probably on right now. They all tend to have the same single screen, no face button layout, or planes, which tend to have 2 engines rather than 3. The same goes for the super sports category, which everyone can agree should be 600cc with 4-cylinder engines, right guys? Suzuki gets it, Honda gets it, Yamaha gets it, Kawasaki kinda gets it, and oh my god, who let Triumph cook? So how do these industry standards come about? Well, in the case of your phone, those of us who are actually old enough to ride will remember the days of full keyboards on phones like the Nokia E7 and BlackBerry. But if you're already at unk status like me, you'll remember when phones looked more like an ATM, except instead of giving you your money, they threw it in a bonfire anytime you wanted to do anything at all, let alone use the internet. Eventually, through competition, we realized as consumers that you don't really need all those buttons if all you're going to do is watch brain rot all day and touchscreens won out. With planes, it's a similar story. People tried 4 engines and even 3, but 2 turned out to be what customers wanted since it was better for fuel consumption. With motorcycles, it's a little bit more complex. In the 80s, Kawasaki and Suzuki made the first 600cc sport bikes. They were intended to be tame, cut-down versions of their liter bikes at the time, so that less skilled riders such as myself could feel like Maverick without dying like Goose. Now, before you say anything about how that's a dated reference, I watched that film for the first time last year. I'm not that old yet. By the end of the 80s, all the big 4 Japanese companies had hopped in the bandwagon, and the Super Sport class was finally added to the Superbike World Championship in 1990. Why 4 cylinders then? Well, I'm not qualified in any engineering field, but I do know that more cylinders generally equals more horsepower, and 4 is just about where bikes reach their peak without running into packaging concerns. Why do Triumph have to be different then? I'm getting to that. Triumph actually did try and be normal for a while, but they were overly ambitious. With a much smaller budget than the Japanese, they actually tried to outdo everyone. While everyone else was using what had worked for the best part of a century, they released the TT600 with fuel injection. Most young riders nowadays won't know why this was a bad decision, but to put it simply, carbs are the established norm in motorcycling, even long after cars had normalized fuel injection for a reason. Feel. Rolling on and off the throttle on a well-tuned carb was guaranteed to feel smoother than the fuel injector of the same period. And the last thing you want on a powerful motorcycle in the era before traction control is a jerky throttle. The fueling on Triumph's early attempt to crash the super sports segment was shockingly bad. Like seriously, imagine you let go of your throttle and handed it to a 70-year-old with both arthritis and Parkinson's and told them to just keep it steady. That's how bad it is. Apparently, it had an ECU designed for the speed triple and then crudely adapted for an extra cylinder. Not only that, but it was also almost as heavy as your average R/motorcycles user, so could never hope to keep up with the competition. After this disgrace and having so much money being wasted on a doomed platform, Triumph hoped to recoup some of the costs by repurposing the bike for a different market. Removing the tacky fairings and slapping on the googly eyes of the Speed Triple, Triumph finally released the Speed 4. Supposedly, Triumph did actually fix the Speed 4's fueling, but from what I've seen that doesn't seem to be the case at all. I can only assume that at some point in time, someone must have replaced the stock ECU with one from a TT600, because mine suffers from the worst fueling of any bike I've ever ridden. This is a bike that hates to be driven slow. Cruise around at 30 miles an hour and this thing will try its best to shove its fuel tank into your balls repeatedly until you give in. Ride around at 20 and it will deem you to be excess weight and throw you off. The faster you ride this thing, the easier it becomes to ride. Now think about that for a second. This is a machine that can out-accelerate a Golf R to 60 with no traction control that you need to use large throttle inputs to ride safely. It's a good thing then that the handling is phenomenal, thanks to its super sport chassis and double disc front brakes. The bike begs for big sweeping B roads and rewards hooligan behavior like no other. Somehow it does all this while being perfectly comfortable over most surfaces, and the ergonomics are perfect for me. Just extreme enough to allow you to get into a comfy tuck, but not as extreme as a 626 for example, so you don't feel like the Green Goblin on his glider. Instead it feels much more like hugging a big metal teddy bear. Okay, that doesn't sound very nice, but I promise it's more comfy than it sounds. Speaking of, have you heard the spine-chilling howl this thing makes? I pull the clutch in when I go past cemeteries in case I accidentally wake the dead. Those gigantic elephant trunk ram air intakes actually contribute a lot to this racket, and honestly I think they make this bike look better than its bigger brother. the Speed Triple. From what I understand, the exhaust normally isn't that loud on Speedies, but this one could be used as a ship horn with how loud it is. I have no clue why it's like this, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Despite being a dedicated supersport, the frame is heavily reinforced, leading to this bike clobbering its way onto the scales at a portly 204 kilograms. It's never going to beat an R6 on pure track pace, but you will struggle to find one of those with a passenger and top box with luggage capacity to spare. That's right, this is a 600cc sport bike with the ability to actually mount a top box from factory. There was also a pannier kit that was soft luggage, but also somehow hard mounted to the bike, but good luck finding any in the wild. This versatility lends the baby Speedy to becoming a Jekyll and Hyde sport tourer, demolishing long motorway runs and holidays away, but still easily holding its own on the track when you get there. Few bikes can actually claim to do both. Before you get carried away on your continental trip, you might want to consider investing in some LED retrofit bulbs. Yes, I'm aware how controversial this is, and I would normally agree that this is something that should never be done to any road-going vehicle. However, with this bike, it is a matter of life and death. You see, the stock headlights are pure garbage. You can't see anything. They'll only ever light one up at a time, and even if you install a relay to light both simultaneously, night rides are terrifying. Yes, I know, if you install LEDs, the light that is actually directed in useful directions is brighter, but the amount of light directed where you need it is far less. Thankfully, the perfectly round reflectors of the Speedy allow a unique situation where very little of the light is wasted, as long as you use a good bulb. I used Philips Altanons, which consist of an LED left and right of the bulb, perfectly placed so they don't cause any light to be wasted up or down into the driver's eyes. On a motorcycle, I allow more leniency for having a bulb that is quote-unquote too bright, because it's not as bad as riding with high beams constantly, and at the very least, they can't say, "Sorry mate, I didn't see ya." If you really can't live with the guilt of being obnoxious, as far as I'm aware, it's still perfectly legal to tint your headlights yellow, which has the added benefit of adding to the retro vibe. So I managed to solve the headlight issue, and this bike seems to be the perfect bike for a Euro trip, so why didn't I do one then? Well, there's a couple more things you should know before throwing your money straight into this pit. One is the fuel economy. It has often been said how much Brits love to drink, and it seems Triumph were eager to carry as much Britishness into this bike as they could. It has a serious drinking problem. Look on Fuely and you will find sub 40 mile per gallon figures for the 2003 model. Any car drivers watching this will be thinking, the performance of a Golf R but the economy of a mid-range one. What is he complaining about? But what you need to remember is that I'm broke. I have always been broke. I will always be broke. I can't afford the petrol this thing demands. Many bikers can't. I came from a 125 which managed 99 miles per gallon night and day. It ran on hopes and dreams but never asked for more. I never had to plan out my fuel expenses before going anywhere because it was guaranteed I wasn't even going to notice. Going to the Triumph was fine at first, but when I changed job and had to start driving 100 miles per day for my commute, I quickly noticed I was almost spending as much on my bike as I was on my 2-litre turbocharged 5-cylinder Volvo for the same journey. £600 per month on petrol for commuting alone. The other reason I never hopped the channel was reliability. In true British fashion, this thing towards the end of my ownership kept breaking down and leaving me stranded in strange and unusual places. Burnt wiring, fouled spark plugs, clogged injectors, and blocked filters were commonplace. Now imagine how difficult it would be to not only recover that bike from the side of a country road in France, then try and find parts for a rare British bike that have fewer running examples than an Aston Martin DB9. I would rather take the risk with the Aston. Eventually, after Triumph realised the weight of their failure, they threw all the 4-cylinder bikes into the sea. Okay, that's not strictly accurate. The Daytona 600 and 650 carried on this bike's legacy for a little while, and have become collector bikes in their own right. The Speed 4 did have a spiritual successor, but it lost a cylinder. Many would argue that this was a good thing. The Street Triple has become one of the most iconic motorcycles Britain has ever produced, but it was thanks to the sacrifice of bikes like the TT600 and Speed 4 that we mere mortals are allowed to be blessed with such a machine. So should you buy this rare piece of automotive history? If you're expecting the price to skyrocket anytime soon, then perhaps not. Prices have been at rock bottom for the best part of a decade now, and most examples seem like they have a hidden fault or two up their sleeve. The only time I would expect prices to rise again would be if Triumph goes under, or if the governments around the world actually follow through and ban petrol motorcycles. This is a bike that would have made sense in another universe where it was a complete sales success and there was an aftermarket for them. However, the niche it has carved out for itself lends the bike to be better suited to someone's weekend toy. In my honest opinion, it does the job far better than any of the Japanese offerings, and it does it with style. If you are someone who needs one bike to do it all, you're about a decade too late. But if all you need is a stylish, sharp, fast, yet comfortable serotonin machine, then look no further because I have yet to find anything that does it better.